Hey, Spencer, thanks for coming on the show again. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, sure thing. I'm looking forward to talking. We're emailing back and forth on some subjects because these things that we're going to talk about in the podcast are things that I have gotten asked many times in emails. And, some of the stuff I have a cursory understanding of. I don't have a great answer for some of it, actually. So I think it's going to be, there are things that I haven't touched on, which is going to be nice. Because at this point, with doing so many podcasts and writing so many articles, it's like, sometimes it's hard to find, like, what's something new that I can talk about that people even care to hear.
There's only so many times you can talk about eat more vegetables and fruit.
I know, eat less and move more and stop eating so much shitty food, please.
Yeah. So that's why I emailed you to think of something a little bit different, and obviously to talk about my new book that's coming out that kind of has some of this information. Right?
Exactly. So you were just telling me before we got on here that you're talking a bit about just the state of obesity research and kind of the disparity between what is known scientifically and what is out there in the mainstream, and what the average person kind of equates with weight loss, or what you have to do to lose weight and so forth.
Right. So I go to these obesity conferences. So I'm what's called an attending physician. I have my board certification and everything like that. But since medical school, I've been going to these obesity conferences, 1 or 2 a year. And every time I go, it's the smartest obesity researchers in the world and the smartest physicians that have such success with their patients. And everybody gets together and talks about what's the best way to help their patients lose weight, what's the latest research. And one of the issues I find is that a lot of this information is in these guidelines and research papers, and everybody's talking to each other, the doctors and the researchers. But a lot of this isn't getting into into mainstream media. What you see a lot of times is a lot of fad diet type stuff.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's just marketing? I mean, I've thought about this myself, and I figure, like, I guess it's just marketing, and it's kind of just pandering to what people, what sounds the easiest, or, trying to put some new twist on science or history if you can mix that up. And there's the paleo whole thing, is like, if you can combine what seems to be historical with scientific information, then you can convince people of anything. Not that even paleo eating is all that bad, but the whole mythology is just not accurate. But what you think, it's just marketing, or?
It is. It's a marketing thing. It's trying to take sensible information and good information and making it sexy. And you've kind of done a really good job at that. You have very evidence-based information in your articles and books, but you make it sexy and you get results.
Right.
So these doctors, and researchers they're good at doing the bench research. They do these randomized controlled trials and other types of studies, and they know how to write academically in their journals, but that doesn't translate. That reads like a textbook, and it's good for us as clinicians and researchers to read that and discuss it at these meetings. But a lot of times, it just doesn't get to the lay public or the general public.
Right.
So that's
it just can't rise above the marketing noise that.
Right. So then you get other doctors that will take one little thing, something like sugar or fructose or anything, and make a whole book on that, and take some truth, but
grains or gluten or whatever.
Exactly, and can kind of sensationalize it and turn it into a whole, almost like a cult-like following. But it in the end, it doesn't really matter, because it doesn't mean the other principles that we discuss at these meetings are wrong. So,
and then sometimes you have a lot of where something can seem to work, but what the person doesn't understand is, why is it working? So it's like, I could tell someone that they're not allowed to eat this long list of foods, and I can make up some weird list of reasons why, or try to misrepresent research or whatever, and then all I'm doing is cutting their calorie intake in half, and they lose weight. But they don't understand that it's not because they didn't eat fructose or starchy carbs, or they stopped eating carbs at 3:00 in the afternoon, or any of that shit. It's just they ate less food. Oh, wow.
Yep. And then you look like the man for doing it.
Exactly. And then it sells the whole, well, it's because it's the no fructose, no starchy carbs after 3 p.m. diet.
Exactly. You got it.
So this kind of rolls into then what you're doing, what you want, tell a bit about your book, and kind of some of the topics that you're covering in the book, because in emailing, those are the things I think that we should dive into.
Right, yeah. So I call it the fat loss prescription. It's because I'm a doctor and I figure it has to do something with a prescription of some sort. But
Right.
so basically what I wanted to do is take all this information I've learned at these conferences, all the guidelines that we read as an obesity physician, and condense it into a patient-friendly book that literally uses my voice to speak to them about the evidence-based lifestyle, but also, so the diet and exercise types of stuff and how to do those things and how to lose weight. But it also dives into medical reasons why you can't lose weight.
Yeah.
Also medications that may prevent you from losing weight, which is what I think a lot of people should know. They can talk to their doctors if there are alternatives or just to know at least this might be preventing them from losing weight.
Yeah, let's talk about some of those
Yeah.
things because, like, sure, you have energy balance and, you have a high protein diet is the way to go, and you should be exercising and you should be doing some resistance training.
Exactly.
That's the stuff that people like you and me, that's just like, okay, that's going to work for the vast majority of people that don't have any sort of extenuating circumstances. But then, and this is where I've gotten lots of emails regarding medications like antidepressants and stuff, and how is, where people are having trouble losing weight and they're not stupid. Like, they understand what they're doing. They know that they're not accidentally overeating by mismeasuring their food. They're not making the common mistakes that people make. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
I'd love to dive into that and just hear from you. Because you're dealing with it all the time, a lot more. You deal with that stuff a lot more than I do. So I'm curious to hear from you.
All right. So when I get a patient and I, immediately obviously get a history and physical and all this stuff, but I look at their medicines that they're taking, especially when they're coming to me for weight loss. And, I know a lot of your followers, I don't know the exact demographic, but I'm assuming, anywhere from, 20s, 30s, but about, I know you have some 50 and 60-year-olds in there too. But
I would say, it really spans, like, probably the majority are between 18 and 35, but from 35-ish up to 50s and 60s, there are quite a few.
Right. So, for women and, even guys too, around that age, a lot of us are getting prescribed antidepressants because we go in, we're feeling tired. The doctor says, "Oh, I guess you're depressed.
Here's an amphetamine."
And
here's medical cocaine. Have some.
Yeah, I mean, so it's kind of scary because and the other thing is younger kids are they have ADHD or they just have some sort of mood disorder where they put them on powerful antipsychotics, but you're listening to the doctor and they don't call it an antipsychotic. It's just a medicine to help with the mood. Yeah. Seroquel is one I see a lot that's used a little bit off label in younger folks to help people sleep. That one can cause a big time weight gain. And that one's, it's an antipsychotic. It's not commonly prescribed to just everybody with depression, but I see that a lot.
Yep, I've heard from people on that drug specifically.
Yep, and that one I'm like, holy cow, it's a very powerful antipsychotic, but they get put on it for this off-label use of some sort of mood disorder, helping them sleep. That one will rack on the weight very quickly.
And how does that? Why?
So I've written about this before and kind of gotten in some arguments, of course, about it because people will say, well, it's just because they're eating more. It's nothing more. It's just making them eat a little bit more. It's nothing else. Well, not necessarily. There's also some mechanisms that, the whole nutrient partitioning thing, it may be driving just fat gain as opposed to just making you eat more. It may be.
And can you talk a little bit more about that, just for people listening, like in terms of nutrient partitioning? Obviously, you're going to talk a little bit about insulin sensitivity and things like that.
Yeah, so nutrient partitioning. When you eat foods and you have these nutrients, macronutrients, whatever, where is the fuel going towards? Is it going towards energy that you expend, your metabolism type of thing? Is it being stored? And is it being stored as muscle glycogen, or are you using that energy to store as fat?
Right. So,
from your standpoint, when we're trying to, you have some supplements in there, like your Recharge has banana leaf in it.
Yeah. Corsulic acid.
And so the goal of that is to nutrient partition your carbohydrates and everything after post-workout into your muscle. So it's basically priming your muscle to soak in the sugar and not store it as fat, basically.
Right.
The same thing is what exercise does. Your nutrient partitioning. Whenever you eat, you want that energy to go to your muscle. You don't want it to be stored as fat.
Right.
It's not only do these things, they do make you hungry and you eat more even without you noticing, but there may be some nutrient partitioning into fat cells and causing excess fat gain that way. It's a little bit controversial, and there's multiple different types of.
So then, like theoretically, then that would be if you kept your calorie intake exactly the same, right? You didn't raise it at all. Basically, I guess you could think of it as your body weight set point would be your fat level would just rise a little bit. And I mean, obviously, it shouldn't just rise forever, right? But it would be like now all of a sudden you're just fatter, even though you haven't.
Yeah, you may feel a little bit more. If you're eating only the same amount. See, this is why it's controversial.
Yeah, sure.
But you should feel a little bit more tired. You know what I mean? You shouldn't have as much energy because it's being stored now.
But if you're sedentary, maybe you don't even notice it.
Not notice it. So and
if you always just feel shitty anyways.
And so and so I get these patients, and there's like, the doctor just put me on this when I was younger, and I've been on it. It's like, holy cow, we got to get you off of that one, or. And sometimes I don't, because they do sometimes need it. Obviously, if they have some psychiatric reason that they need it, but sometimes it's used off label. So that's a big one that I did want to mention. The more common ones are the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, the SSRIs. Those are the most common, and I guess I was naive to it, but when I finally started actually practicing medicine in residency, so that's after medical school, I noticed like everybody was on one. It was just like, oh, you're on sertraline or you're Zoloft or Celexa or you're on Prozac, but and it's kind of like, why does everybody just kind of need some pills to make them feel better?
Yeah.
Now I will say.
Why do
right?
Hey, I like caffeine.
Right. So I will say that depression's very real, and medicines have their place. But if it's a mild depression, I'm very reluctant to just go straight to medicine unless the patient. It's like, nope, I just want that, because there is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is proven to be just as good as medicine, if not maybe even better.
Right.
Which means you're not taking any medicine.
I mean, isn't the research out there that has shown that some of these drugs are no better than placebos? I mean, So you might as well just say, here's a sugar pill. I mean,
it's controversial. I mean, there are real things going on in the brain,
of
and
course, yeah.
And so I think what we're going to find out in the very near future is there's some genomic testing stuff you can do. And based on these tests, they're going to say, you know what, this drug actually may work for you. So those studies may show us a little bit better in the future. So
I mean, there's got to be something said for lifestyle too. I mean, like depending on how the person lives. I mean, you and I would be depressed if we lived the way that some people live. Like, yeah. So it's kind of like, I guess you could just take a drug, or you could maybe do something to like feel better in life, like take care of your body or start exercising. Don't watch 5 hours of TV every night. You know what I mean? Like don't eat shitty food all the time.
Right. So, and those are kind of in those questionable mild depression, like just kind of this slight mood disorder. Whereas when someone's like really depressed and they have that, you can just, if you're around them, they kind of suck you into this dark cloud.
Yeah, no, I've experienced
Those are the ones where it's like, okay, we need to get you medicine. We got to make sure you're not suicidal. But, and those are very important. So a lot of people, they just end up on these pills. And I'm always going, did this actually make you feel better? And some of them will say yes. And some of them will say, you know what, I didn't feel anything. I've been on it for a few years. And we wean them off and see how they do. And the thing is, a lot of these patients are trying to lose weight. So these SSRIs, there's some of them are mixed, some showing maybe some weight loss in the first years, then weight gain. But the one that really does it is called Paxil or paroxetine. So I wanted to mention that in case anybody's on that, that listens to your show. And don't stop it, for the love of God. It's just something to talk to your doctor about if you're on one of these medicines. The medicine I usually try to get people on, if they're going to try to go that route, is called Wellbutrin or bupropion. I mean, obviously, I try to get people to cognitive behavioral therapy first, but bupropion actually is a it's approved for weight loss with another medicine combined with it, but it does in these depression studies shows people do lose actual weight with it. It's also used for smoking cessation. So in case people smoke out there.
And then, and in terms of Paxil, what do you like? What's the story there? Is it also just a similar like? It's not totally understood, but it's just is a thing.
Yeah, this one's definitely not understood because the other ones in the same class don't have the same effect for some reason. So I'm not exactly sure why. And I've looked at multiple reviews on why this happens, and it's kind of debated. But
and it's fat gain. It's not weight gain. It's not just because
right, you're not gaining muscle or glycogen.
Well, I mean, even water. Like some drugs mess with your hormones, and then I've heard from people that have noticed a lot more water retention on certain.
Right, exactly. It's thought to be fat gain, but that's a good thought that maybe they aren't doing DEXAs on these people, and maybe it's possible that some of it is hydration status.
Yeah. If it's BIA, then it can be
right. Exactly. So the other one that everybody asks about is birth control. I'm sure you get that.
Absolutely.
And so the interesting thing about that is like oral contraceptives. So the mixed oral contraceptives with estrogen and progesterone. Those are mixed. A lot of women say I gained 20 pounds when I started that, and some women tend to lose weight. It's hard to know, but the one that everybody knows that they gain weight is the depot shot, the medroxyprogesterone acetate. I don't know if anybody's asked about that, but it's
not that specifically, just birth control pills.
Yeah, so it's the shot, and sometimes there's one called the Nexplanon and also the Mirena. The Mirena is an IUD intrauterine device that has progesterone only, and it's supposed to work locally in the uterus. But there's thought that maybe some of it is systemic, and so that has that progesterone weight gain effect too. So something to ask about. I tend to favor the copper IUD.
That's what my wife has.
I favor that one. It's non-hormonal, and it seems to be safe. Some women have some cramping issues and some extra bleeding from that.
She's had one for a while and never on no real issues that I had to share. I mean, good. Yeah.
And that's the one that I tend to, hey, if you want to go that route, I would do that. I'm all in favor of trying to not mess around with hormones.
Exactly. That's how we thought about it too.
And it's very
best for her health. Very effective. I mean,
extremely
take it out, and then she got pregnant real quickly, and then had the kid, and then
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So those are those are the most common ones. The birth control pills mixed. Some people will gain weight, but when they start averaging it all out, it's like, well, it's hard to say. But definitely the Depo shot.
And is that just because higher estrogen levels is just generally associated with more fatness, and it's one of those things that. Again, because in the people that I've heard from, again, a lot of these women, they know what they're doing with their diet. Like they understand how it works, which is why they're so like, how, why?
Yeah. And so this one is actually just the progesterone part. So when you take the pills, it's an estrogen and a progesterone.
Yeah, and the shot is just progesterone.
It's just progesterone, and that I want to say that one works more towards appetite stimulating because that's what there's actually medicines used in cancer called Megase, but
to stimulate appetite.
Stimulates appetite,
right?
But there probably some definite water changes there too.
Yeah,
so that kind of compounds it, but.
Because I've heard then from some of these women actually when they came off they switched to something else or whatever and then lost weight quickly. So that kind of led me to one was kind of like, well, I mean, clearly we're dealing more with water, at least in some of the cases than anything else.
Exactly.
Which can be really frustrating though, because it can come fast and they don't understand, they don't know, and you can't diet it away. In fact, if you try, depending on what you're doing, like so I've heard from women that have gotten, I mean, I wouldn't say desperate, but they're just like, okay, I guess I need to eat less or I need to exercise more. And then that throws cortisol even more out of whack. And you know what I mean? It just becomes like a dwindling spiral.
Yep. And that's exactly, what I try to talk about in this book, because it's like, everybody's like, you just got to eat less. You got to move more. And it's like, okay, hold on a second. We got to make sure that there's not a reason.
Right.
That these aren't working, because it's possible, and I talk about this. It's possible that you're secretive about a binge eating disorder. It's possible you're off by 50 to 100% of your calories. As you know, the studies show dietitians can't even do it right. And so it's.
I mean, I've written about it, but it can be innocent. It can be like you actually go to measure that cup of oatmeal, but you don't realize that you just put 100 grams of oatmeal when it should have been 80 grams of oatmeal,
and that adds up.
I mean, as stupid as that sounds, though, okay, now you're, let's say that's 80 calories over for that meal, but you do that again with the peanut butter, you do that again with over and over, and now all of a sudden you've eaten 500 more calories in the day, even though you feel like you're on your diet, and you're like, how is this, you know what I mean?
Exactly. And those 500 calories will ruin the patients that I had. Cause I work with, patients with very morbid obesity, 400 pounds.
Yeah.
And those 500 calories on each day are needed to be away, Exactly. And so with these medicines, whether it is strictly, if it makes you actually just gain fat by themselves, the nutrient partitioning, or just a little bit extra hungry or extra hunger,
or a little bit of both. Who knows?
A little bit of both. Those little things can add up because you may not even notice you're snacking a little bit extra here and there. And so it's a definite issue.
Cool. Well, that's great to because again, I know that there are people listening that are either running into that themselves or know people that are running into that. So it's good I'm glad that you covered that. So. What else? So what else is on the agenda for the book? And because we had kind of went over that little list of things, and
so medical issues. So I talk about I list pretty much every medicine in there. So if you want to check it out, if you go, hey, is my medicine on there?
When's the book out, by the way? Is it?
I want to release it by Christmas. Kind of the whole New Year's.
I know how that. Yeah.
And it's a nice short read. It's about 100 pages. It's not long, but I literally try to condense everything into this, everything that I know into this one thing. So
cool.
Hopefully it'll
fat loss prescription, right?
Yeah, so the fat loss prescription.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so the other things are actual medical issues. Now, this is, again, most people say you just got to eat less, move more, but last time you and I talked a little bit about testosterone, and some guys as they age, and this is again controversial, their testosterone will get a little bit lower, and if they get some fat around, especially the visceral fat or the belly fat, and it start getting a little bit of insulin resistance and inflammation, their testosterone will go down even lower. And so it's possible that their hypogonadism, or we call it the male obesity-related secondary hypogonadism, that is not helping with their weight loss. I mean, if they were able to lose weight, their testosterone will go up generally, but a lot of times they cannot do it. They just don't feel motivated. There's not a lot of energy. They just don't want to go to the gym. They don't want to cook. So what do you got to do? You got to make sure you're not missing any other causes of their hypogonadism other than their
lifestyle,
lifestyle and visceral fat. But sometimes it may be worth trying a course of it. Again, this is controversial. My brother's an endocrinologist. We talk about it all the time. I talk with the urologists that do it all the time, and other family doctors and obesity doctors that do it. And
that's as a slight tangent, because I get asked fairly frequently about TRT as well, and I've done a little bit of research. Not you by any means, but apparently the only thing that seemed actually valid is that there is a higher risk of prostate cancer. And also, of course, it depends how high you are going with it, and that was the only thing where I could say there at least is some evidence of this at a TRT dosage. But again, I might be wrong though, because it's something that I haven't done a ton of reading on.
Yeah. So that used to be the scare, because the testosterone pathway, it gets converted into DHT, which fuels the prostate. What they found is, and it was so scary, it was very scary, because we thought that, gosh, we're causing prostate cancer. What they actually found is that if you have an underlying prostate cancer and you give someone testosterone, and this is why we monitor them, it will fuel that cancer. So we now pretty much know that it doesn't cause the cancer, but it can fuel one and make it kind of come out. And so that's why we monitor their prostate.
And you wouldn't know that, yet that's why you have to monitor, huh? Because
exactly. And then once, if it shoots up, we go, oh geez, and then we get them, we have to do biopsies and all that stuff. So that whole thing's been debunked. The one thing right now with the testosterone is possible cardiac disease, and this is again controversial because some people, if they have low testosterone and you give them testosterone, it can improve a lot of these risk factors that go along with their metabolic syndrome. So their insulin resistance. In fact, I just downloaded a paper and was sending it to my brother. We were discussing it a little bit, and how you can give someone with metabolic syndrome who has low testosterone, not someone who has normal testosterone metabolic syndrome. You give them some testosterone, and all of a sudden you alleviate these things, almost like as good as a diabetes medication type of thing. Uh-huh. And some of that.
Isn't higher testosterone is just generally associated with
better health,
a leaner physique, and better health, right? It's
exactly. So so that was the question. If we give this medicine, and there are going to be more trials, they just keep doing more trials and looking at this. But my preferred method is to see, hey, why don't we try to get you to lose weight and see if we can bump it up? If that fails, if they're just like, I just feel miserable, whatever, I go, you know what? Okay, let's give you some testosterone. If they don't want to have kids, if they do still want to have kids, if they're a little bit younger, you can start looking at things like clomiphene or Clomid, and also like HCG and things like that. But exactly, I don't try to push the hormones. It's just something to keep in the back of the mind. It's like, this guy's got a lot of weight around his waist, he's got a waist circumference larger than, 39, 40 inches. You start asking about his libido. You start talking about his muscle mass. He's not able to get in the gym. He just doesn't feel good. It's something to consider.
Yeah. So we got onto that just from the medical condition of just having low testosterone, how that can kind of mess with weight loss or make it harder to lose weight. What are some other, and that's definitely out there. I hear from that. I hear from guys with low T. It's here and there.
Yeah.
And I've heard from quite a few guys that saw market improvements just by getting tough and just being I want to eat that shit, but I'm not going to. Yeah. I don't want to go to the gym, but I'm gonna go. And then after a few months of improving things, it's they feel way better, and now they don't have to force themselves, and now they're kind of in the grooves, which is nice.
And that's my preferred method, if possible. So very cool. So another thing is for women especially. Well, not especially for women, PCOS, Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome. I'm sure you've heard a little bit.
Yeah, I've written a little bit about it.
Yeah, and so this one's kind of one of those chicken or the egg things, but at least in my experience, and there's going to be some more studies looking into this, because I think what we're going to find is that people, we don't really know enough about PCOS, because there seems to be different types of it and how they show up and everything, but it tends to be harder for those with PCOS to lose weight, and sometimes you got to be really aggressive with them. So that's something to consider. So if your periods are a little bit off, you're missing, skipping periods, they're irregular. You might have a little bit excess acne, maybe even a little bit of some little bit of hair even on your face. It's kind of embarrassing, but talk to your doctor about this, because it's very important to know if you have PCOS. There's some things you can do to help.
You want to explain what that is real quick, just for the listeners?
Yeah, so Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome, it's this syndrome where women get a little bit of excess androgens or hormones that are usually thought of guy hormones, but women have them too. It's the hormones that can cause hair growth and libido and other things too, like testosterone and that type of stuff. And they also get something called insulin resistance, which you talk a lot about.
Right.
And then you get these, not everybody, but you get these cysts around in your ovaries. And the thing is, this is why it's somewhat controversial, because it's not known whether if you gain weight and you get this syndrome, or if you kind of have this syndrome, you start gaining weight.
Right.
Either way, weight loss and diet tend to improve it, though. So
Isn't there also some like you'd want to be eating probably lower glycemic carbs, if I remember correctly, and maybe even a lower carb diet in general?
I tend to push a little bit of a lower carb diet now. Like I said, there are people that will argue this all day, the vegan type of pushers, which I can't really argue with, because it's like you give someone more vegetables, you give them on a lower calorie diet.
Exactly.
Overall, it's going to be better. But
I mean, considering the average Western diet, if they start eating more vegetables, their carb intake is going to go down.
Generally,
I mean, just will.
Generally, you replace the junk, and I say junk. Some people are like, no, there's no such thing as junk food. I'd say junk, but processed foods, refined processed foods, you replace them with vegetables. You're lowering your carbs, you're lowering your calories.
That's a good fantasy. There's no such thing as a junk food.
People say that.
Oh no, I know. That's if it fits your macros. Like, I'm going to eat Pop-Tarts every day. I'm going to get 80% of my carbs from just Kellogg's or something.
Right. It's like, not to go off on a tangent, but I call a spade a spade. It's like, listen, you just don't put it on a pedestal. It's a junk food. You can enjoy it once in a while. That's not a big deal. That doesn't mean you have to become afraid of it. It's like, come on. Anyway, so
it's that point of nutrients. Like, you can't just eat, donuts and then take a multivitamin and be like, that's the same as eating a bunch of vegetables and fruit and stuff. It's just, no, it's not the same.
Exactly. So women listening, so if you have some irregular periods, you got some excess acne, you talk to your doctor about that. Because the other thing, as I've mentioned in my book, and especially if you have a lot of weight gain around your midsection, and there's a very rare condition called Cushing syndrome, where it's hypercortisolism, and there's something in your body making it, and those two syndromes can overlap. The one with Cushing syndrome,
I've heard from women with that.
It's you will not be able to lose weight unless somebody finds the issue with you. So that's why I kind of talk about both of them. The PCOS thing, it's the other thing is you can get medicines to help with PCOS. So it's definitely worth talking to your doctor if you have some of these issues and you have some weight gain and you're having trouble losing the weight. So that's another one I mentioned in there. Of course, the one everybody thinks about is hypothyroidism.
That's exactly what I was going to say. What about the thyroid?
That's one. And, so I have Hashimoto's thyroiditis myself, is autoimmune hypothyroidism. So I love talking about it. I almost went into endocrinology. I think I talked about this in the last podcast, maybe a little bit, but ended up doing the family medicine and then the obesity medicine route. But I love talking about thyroid, and so come to find out that most people that have obesity or have gained weight, it's usually not your thyroid. However, if you want to make sure that it's definitely not your thyroid, though, because if you miss that, the doctor's going to feel silly and you're going to, be frustrated. So
yeah, that's what I've always told. Like, whenever people say, I think it might be my thyroid, like, go to a doctor and find out. You just,
I think it's worth, in the guidelines of these.
There's no reason to try to self-diagnose it off the internet where everything says you have brain cancer. You just don't know. Just go.
And trust me, before medical and even mid-medical school, I still did that myself. So, it's worth. I think everybody that's trying to lose weight, and especially, it's not.
What are some of the symptoms? Like, that there might be something up with the thyroid.
So if the symptoms are pretty much. You feel a little bit sluggish, which who doesn't, at some point of their life. But dry skin, constipation, coarse hair, low heartbeat, even low blood pressure, and you just don't feel well. But it's a little, it's this dry skin, coarse hair that's kind of throws people off. I had a little bit of that too when I first got diagnosed. I just kind of randomly said, I don't feel right. And so the thing is, though, what happens is that people go in and they get this thing called the TSH, the thyroid stimulating hormone. It's the hormone from your brain that tells your thyroid to work. And now this will get controversial because there's a wide range of normal. And if it's at the higher end of normal, the doctor may say it's fine, but it may be something to look a little bit further into or check it again or keep checking it. Because, and when I say the high end of normal, I'm talking about like high threes, fours. The good range is around 1 to 2, but even in the 2 range is fine. When you start getting to the 3s and 4s, you may want to monitor it a little bit closer, or look a little bit closer with other hormone testing with your actual thyroid. And so a lot of doctors will just get this TSH test, and it's generally a good screening test. But if you really want to look a little bit further, you want to test the actual thyroid hormones, and that's getting what's called a free T4 test, and maybe even a free T3, although it's usually a free T4, which those are the actual thyroid hormones.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's if you're trying to lose weight, and especially if you're struggling, it's worth getting it checked just to make sure. And
how much? Because again, this is an area that I haven't done a lot of research. I've read, I've come across it in different things I've read. I don't know, maybe a handful of papers on it just to have a basic understanding. Yeah. From the stuff that I had read, that in terms of like a decrease in basal metabolic rate, if it's not that significant unless it's a really bad type of issue. Is that true?
Yeah. And so I'm glad you brought that up. So a lot of times, when people come in, I think it's my thyroid. Yeah. It's, first of all, it's usually not, but if it is, you actually don't gain a ton of weight, even if it is your thyroid.
Because I think I saw the biggest reduction in BMR I had seen was like 14-15% or something.
It's not, it's really not much. A lot of times, maybe 10, 20 pounds. I mean, obviously, if it's really bad, they're going to have much more issues. They could be in a coma, type of thing, have heart failure type of thing.
And just to put in perspective for listeners, like if your basal metabolic rate, mine is probably about 2,100 calories or so, 2,200 max. So if it's a 15% reduction, that's significant. And if I didn't realize it, I could gain a half a pound of fat a week, just by that alone. So that can add up, but it's not like, because I've heard from people that were afraid that and I've heard people that actually knew they had a thyroid condition or just had recently found out about it, and then were afraid like they're fucked. Like now their metabolism doesn't even work anymore and they can't lose weight.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually, so when I got diagnosed, I still had abs, and people were like, there's no way, you don't look like you have hypothyroidism.
Right.
And plus you're a young guy, which doesn't usually fit the thing. So I got my antibodies tested. Yeah, they were high. I was having destruction of my thyroid from an autoimmune process. But I went on, replacement, Synthroid. And now I'm actually on a combo of Synthroid and Cytomel, which is the T4 and the active T3, just a very little bit. And so, a lot of my patients that have hypothyroidism, I want to make sure if they're trying to lose weight, I optimize it. If you optimize it, especially if you tinker around with maybe some of the T3 and helping them, if they have an issues, convert it over, because your body converts the T4 to T3, which is the active stuff. So if you optimize them, they usually do just fine, and they're not screwed, trying to lose weight. So definitely, though, if you do have hypothyroidism, you want to optimize it. Get a good doctor that will help you. Don't get a crazy doctor that will put you on a ton of T3 or a ton of armor and try to base it only on your symptoms. But some doctors may
don't listen to the bodybuilder in the gym.
Who
put you on blasts his thyroid hormones for
exactly. So, but no, definitely not screwed. You just got to get a good doctor that will optimize it for you.
Like you.
Well, that'd be great. Come visit me.
Cool. So are there any other medical conditions that just in your experience that what you talk about in the book and that you think we should discuss?
The only other one there are a bunch of other very rare things. There's some genetic syndromes that you'd want to catch younger in life, some deficiencies in the brain and leptin deficiencies and some stuff like that. The only other one that really people bring up a lot of times is menopause. And so I don't know if you have menopausal women, but it's a very common question. And there's some good and the bad. The bad is that, there is some weight gain associated. And I don't even know what the good is, because menopause can be really miserable for some women. Some women go through it just fine. They literally felt no issues. I guess the other thing that I was going to say was that, so they think that, well, then give me some hormones, some good bioidentical
Oh,
estrogen.
let me stop and ask you, what's the story of bioidentical hormones? And I know I could define them for you, but it's that there's an area that there's just something that's, I have these things that are on a list where I'm like, here's some things I want to know more about when I have this never ending to learn more list. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So okay.
Because the story is, that these are totally fine for you and they don't have any of the negative effects associated with other hormones.
Exactly. And so
when I hear that, I'm just like, that just sounds too good to be true. I don't believe it.
Yeah, it is too good.
Sounds like marketing.
It is a lot of that. And this, you could probably have a whole podcast. You could get a round table of me and probably some actually people that are, doing the research on, the bioidenticals versus the equine hormones. But pretty much the thought is that you actually give the hormones that are made in your body through, whatever, if you want the patch or the cream or whatever you do with the estrogen, progesterone.
As opposed to what?
As opposed to, so they basically do these equine, or they I always say horse urine.
I was say that we're talking about horses right now.
Yeah. So they manufacture these hormones, as opposed to, and they're very similar in the receptors that they hit, but
right. Just not exactly the same.
It's not exactly the same. So, especially with the big women's health initiative, the big one that everybody talks about is that, we were killing people. We didn't even know that when we were putting people on these hormones right at menopause for no reason. Mm-hmm. So it was a little bit controversial. So now you got other groups, the natural groups, saying, well, the bioidenticals wouldn't do that.
Yeah,
but they're
my mom's on them, and she works with some doctor that's all into it. And I don't know enough to have I couldn't debate the doctor on. I don't know enough about it, but I've just tried to tell my mom, like, that sounds like marketing. I know, at least I know supplements. I know bullshit when I hear it. That sounds like bullshit.
It is. There are still risks. However, they do have slightly different bioavailabilities, and they may hit the receptors in different ways.
She's been sold on the they're great. There's no reason to not.
Yeah. So I will say that. So if anybody is out there going through menopause, they're feeling miserable, it's very worth it to talk to the doctor. You can get on these hormones. You talk about the breast cancer risk and all these different risks of clots and type of thing. But if you're miserable with hot flashes and that type of thing, it's worth discussing it. Now,
it's quality of life point.
Yeah, actually. So what I was going to say is, so. Do these hormones help you stop that weight gain at menopause? Possibly, but not. It's not a slam dunk. So it's not something I would go seeking at menopause. If you have the symptoms, definitely. But if you don't go asking for the hormones just to stop this possible weight gain. The same lifestyle stuff that you discuss. Is what you got to do, and unfortunately, it becomes harder, and that's the bottom line. But if you have these symptoms, the hormones may help. That's what I briefly touch on it in the book, and there have been studies done to say whether do they, and it's a little bit mixed, but maybe worth it if you do have the symptoms, of course.
So you had mentioned that as you get older, it just gets harder. That's also just a thing that is it true? Is it not true? It's something that everyone knows, kind of thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
and can it be preempted by, like, let's say we have people listening in their 20s and their 30s, in their 40s or whatever, like, what can you do to not to give yourself the best chance, or you don't have to deal with that when you get older?
So the most important thing is to literally right now, not in a couple of years or whatever, right now start doing the lifestyle things and build up a good base. And that, that seems obvious, but it's absolutely true. You want to build up as much muscle. You want to be as lean as possible. If you can bulk, I guess, if you want to do that type of thing to get the muscle, and then lean down.
If you want to get it done efficiently, it's just
exactly. Yeah. But it's starting right now and building as much muscle as possible, because later on in life, it is possible to gain some muscle, but it's not going to be as easy as it is right at this moment at your age. Yeah. So that's my biggest advice. But my dad was just here. He's 67 now. He came for Thanksgiving, and he was lifting with me, and he had some vertigo issues, so couldn't get down on the bench press recently, so he couldn't lift. But he was doing a lot of outside activity, talking about it, because he had a body, you know, like mine and my brother's when he was younger, and he wants to get back into it a little bit more. And I said, absolutely, you can. You know, we look at you see these bodybuilders. There's some 70-some-year-old bodybuilders, and they look fantastic.
Yeah.
You know,
I've seen pictures of people that look better than people in their 20s.
So I absolutely, especially my patients, I'm just like, oh, let's get you on a good program, let's get you with a good diet, and just let's blast it right now, and just don't worry about it. Don't, you know, you can be the best you. You know, I promise. It's not a reason to give up.
Totally. And in terms of why it might get harder as you get older to lose fat, do you think that's mainly hormonal? I mean, if you've lost muscle as you age, your BMR is a bit lower. I mean,
it's a little bit of mix of everything.
Yeah.
With hormone, you know, testosterone and all that, but also, you know, like you said, your metabolic rate starts declining a little bit each year, a little bit by little bit after, you know.
If you don't preserve muscle, that is. I mean, that's also what, to your point, you're saying, like, gain muscle now and keep it for the rest of your life. But
as much as possible, and keep using it.
Yeah.
That will keep you, you know, and keep. The thing is, a lot of people start eating just crap, you know, they're stressed and life happens. That happens. But whatever you can do to stop doing whatever that is, in which, you know, I talk about in my book, you talk about in your books, and get back on a good plan. And of course, make sure there's no medical issues and no medicines that are preventing you from doing it. Just get it done now.
Yep.
Whatever you have to do.
I think there's something to be said for, I've written about it. I know that, there's not a ton of research out there on it. I found some stuff that I was able to read and found interesting, just on this body weight set point. And I've experienced it myself, and I've emailed and spoken with a lot of people who experience that. The longer you stay lean, the easier it is to stay lean, essentially. Mm-hmm. From an appetite standpoint, you know, I guess normalization of leptin and ghrelin, and you just get used to being lean. Yeah. And even I don't have a great explanation, and this might just be more to nutrition, nutrient partitioning. Maybe why, but like I can, like, in, you know, Thanksgiving dinner, and this is one meal, and so it's just one meal, but eat, I mean, until I can't move. I don't even know. 8,000 calories. And I'm pretty lean. Like, I have ab veins and shit. So I would see a difference, and see no difference. None at all. Where I'm like, how? I just ate 500 grams of fat in one meal.
And that's what's so cool. So, you know, the same thing, my brother, he's always been lean. He's been lifting since, you know, we have YouTube videos of us lifting when he was like 7 or 8 or whatever. And I was like 4 or 5.
That's cool.
And like, so he's had abs forever. And literally, you know, he's always been a little bit leaner than I was, because I was a heavyweight wrestler. But I'm pretty lean now. But, you know, he's exactly the same way. And I think a little bit it has to do with maybe some epigenetic type of things. And so you got that, plus you got obviously the nutrient partitioning, the leaner you are, your better insulin sensitivity and all that type of stuff. It pays to take care of yourself early, and then you coast along as you age. So
I mean, I think that's the real payoff, and I've spoken about that a lot and written about that a lot. Just that you put in it's like working for money. So you put in all that hard work, you earn that money, you be smart with it, and then you have the payoff now of being able to enjoy it. And I think it's very similar with your body. You put in all that work, you do it smart, you do it right, and the payoff is that, I mean, I wouldn't say like, oh, we just get to cruise, you know, but it is kind of like you get to be a little bit looser with your diet. If you miss a workout, it's not not that big of a deal when you already have the muscle size that you want, and you're just maintaining it, which is kind of where I'm at this point personally.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the goal, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. No, you nailed it right there.
Cool. So, any other weight loss? I mean, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that you've touched on. All the big ones. Those are the big ones. Last, I thought of age, because that's one that gets asked fairly frequently. And to that point, I mean, I'm sure you've worked with a lot of people in 40s, 50s, 60s, and I've worked with a lot of people. Just emailed and heard from a lot of people that were able to do really well, and that's actually the first time that they ever even tried weightlifting was 50 years old, and went from like a normal looking 50-year-old dude, visceral fat, blah blah whatever, to they have to put in work. It takes a year or so, but a year later they look better than they did in their 20s.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not like they were obese in their 20s. They just look like a normal, they would have been happy to have that body at 55 at 20.
Yep. It's amazing. I love it.
Yeah. It's super cool.
So yeah, nothing. I mean, I touch on some other things in the book, but yeah, it kind of puts it all together. And, I figured, your readers or your listeners and readers, would probably have for anything, a good resource in case they get put on some medicines, or if they're on medicines, or any possible other things that could be stopping them from getting to their goals. I wanted to kind of condense it into one little book there.
Yeah, that's great. And I'll definitely add a link once it goes live. I'll add a link, on the post for the podcast. And so it's the Fat Loss Prescription, Dr. Spencer Nadolsky. And it'll be out soon. You said like December-ish. I know how that is. I'm working on doing an update on one of my cookbooks, and you tell people like,
I know.
And I keep on now. I'm getting more and more cynical with my own judgment. You know what I mean? Like whatever I think is going to be. If I'm thinking if 4 weeks is my initial thought, I say 12.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea, because I think I wanted this book out in the fall. Back in September, I think it was.
I mean, same. I wanted this cookbook out now, and now it's like, if I get it out in January, I'll be happy. I think we can do that, but that's,
that's life.
But once it's done, it's done. Yeah, exactly. Everything takes more time and more money than that's just the way it is. But so definitely check it out. Again, if you're listening to this after December, January-ish, then you'll just see it in the post. But I look forward to reading it myself. If you can if you want, you can send me a PDF. I'd love to check it out.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Before we get off, how can people find you and your work? Like, obviously they can go on Amazon to find your book or whatever.
Right. So my personal blog is www.drspencer.com. I also have a blog with my brother. We promote other doctors who lift. So it's docswholift.com. DOCSWHOLIFT.com.
You got a list. So Docs Who Lift.
Docs Who Lift.
Yeah, just
and then I got my Twitter and also Facebook. Come find me.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again for taking the time, Spencer. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. It's nice to what you're talking about, and you are living this every day, and you're dealing with things that, again, like that I hear from. It's on the fringes in my world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's great to be able to just say, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. Here's your answer. So now I can link them to this podcast forevermore when I get these questions.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate you having me on.